Hello, welcome back to Pathworking with Archangels. So you should know by now I'm Theolyn Cortens. I have a speciality in the topic of angels that goes back many, many years. I had experiences myself which led me to discover the archangels of the Tree of Life, but I've also studied the subject as an academic topic and gained a master's degree. So I'm quite an unusual person in that sense, because I come from an intuitive and inspirational and mystical way of doing things, but I've also done the scholarship and the research. So I'm putting these talents and gifts and skills that I've acquired over many years to your service at this unusual time in human history, when many of you, like me, will be staying at home, wondering what the earth is going on, wondering what the world will be like, how things will be reshaped when the virus that's giving us all these problems has been tamed. In the meantime, in some ways, that virus is asking us to tame ourselves, to discover more about ourselves, so that perhaps we can approach our natural world in a more harmonious way. The natural world, the environment, and each other. So my concept with offering the course was to guide you getting to know the different archangels, perhaps in a way that you haven't looked at before. Well, we started at the foot of the Tree of Life, and we met Auriel and Sandalphon on the yin side and the yang side. Auriel more feminine, Sandalphon more masculine. Sandalphon is like a brotherly companion. He's like the guardian angel for the whole human race. And Auriel is like the mother for the whole human race. In my image, the way I saw her, she carries a baby. So she's not unlike many of the other goddesses and divine beings that have been represented in the past, like the Virgin Mother or Isis. Invariably, there's a baby, and also quite often there will be a lion or some other cat creature. Ancient statues of those goddesses often had one or even two lions or cheetahs or fierce creatures with them. And this was to demonstrate that although there was a motherly quality, there was always strength as well. And with Sandalphon, we see there's the lamb. And Sandalphon is often called the Messiah, the Saviour. And Messiah is obviously also associated with the lamb. So here we have this couple at the bottom of the Tree of Life, and they should be a happily married couple, and everything should be harmonious in the kingdom. The bottom container of light is called the kingdom. Those containers of light in Hebrew are called sephirot. That's the plural. Sephira is the singular, but let's just call them containers. So as we move up the central channel, we met Gabriel. And Gabriel, as I explained, we can associate with, if we look for planets to associate Gabriel with, that would be Mercury. Mercury, called in Greek Hermes, a communicator, a big messenger. All angels are messengers, but Gabriel is the really special messenger, bringing messages to Mary and to Muhammad and to Moses. So Gabriel's about communication, how you bring out your sense, your inner sense, and deliver it to the world, whether that's through words, music, dance, whatever. It's about self-expression. So when we come up to the next level, we have two archangels, one on the yin, one on the yang, and here we find those two containers we find Raphael and Haniel. So Raphael sits at a container which is called Hod, and Haniel is on the other side at a container called Netza, which Netza is usually translated as victory, and Hod is usually translated as splendor. But there are other words associated with both of them. So these two are about relationships in different ways, as we will discover. So Raphael we could associate with the planet Venus, and Haniel we could associate with the planet Mars. If you look at other maps of the Tree of Life Archangels, you may find that where I've put Mars, where I think Haniel represents Mars, other people think Venus should be there. But I would like you to put aside any thoughts or recollections you have from other Tree of Life maps and just keep working in this way with me at this time. These were my experiences, and they were intuitive, but with a certain amount of intellectual consideration, especially as I'm an astrologer as well. I think Haniel is definitely about Mars, and that was my experience. He was a spiritual warrior. We'll come to him in the next video. But for the time being, we are going to move over and consider Venus, Raphael, the healer of God. Yes, well, this is all about balance. And when we come to Raphael, who is the archangel, I would say, for Venus, she is also the Venus as a planet in astrology watches over the signs of Taurus and Libra. And of course, Libra is very well known for being the sign of the balance. So let's have a chat about Raphael and see what we can receive from this exploration. So Raphael is one of only 3 archangels recognized by the Roman Catholic Church. Raphael's story is in the Book of Tobit, and the Book of Tobit is included in the Roman Catholic Bible. So I don't know which kind of Bible you've been brought up on, but if you've been brought up on a Protestant Bible, then you would find the Book of Tobit in another document, set of books that are called the Apocrypha. And they've been sort of sidelined by the Protestants. Although Protestant churches often have stained glass windows that include Raphael and Gabriel and Michael and often Uriel as well. So there's a kind of a mismatch sometimes about the significance of this very special archangel, and there's almost more written about Raphael's role because of the Book of Tobit than you find in other biblical stories, because definitely Michael is mentioned and Gabriel is mentioned by name. They're both mentioned in the book of Daniel, and Gabriel, of course, is mentioned in the Gospel stories about Mary, and also Michael is mentioned in the later prophecies at the end of the Christian edition, which is usually called the New Testament. But Raphael has her, I think of her as very feminine as an archangel, has this very special story. It's quite a long and complicated story, but it's worth me giving it to you as briefly as I can. So it's in the book of Tobit. Tobit is a Jewish man, very charitable man. He's had quite a lot of troubles. He's had to move from one place to another. He's been exiled, and then he's allowed to come home. And he lives in Nineveh, which is in ancient Babylon. And one of the charitable things he does is to bury one of his Jewish neighbours. And the Babylonians were very keen on the Jews doing these burials. It was forbidden to them, actually. And so he has to go out at night in secret and bury his neighbour. And in the process, he finds that the wall nearby has got these sparrows on it, and somehow he must have been doing it perhaps very early in the morning, because the sparrows were in action and they were dropping their droppings, and they went into his eyes and caused cataracts. So pretty much at the beginning of our story, Tobit, the old man Tobit, is blind. He has a wife, and the wife starts trying to earn money for them, because they're very poor then, because he can't earn. And when she earns money, he gets very cross with her, because he thinks she's up to no good in some way. She complains like mad and says, "Why are you being so mean to me when I'm trying to help?" So you can see he's getting very frustrated with life at that point. So then, as he realises perhaps he's coming towards the end of his days, and also his end days are not very happy because he's blind, he talks to his son Tobias, and he tells Tobias how he had a relative called Raguel in a place called Medea, which is quite a long way off. And he said, I let him have some money when we were younger. You know, he's got some funds that could come back to us if you would go and ask him. Okay, so money is involved in this story. So the next thing that we hear is a kind of, if it was a movie, it would be a sort of parallel edit. The next thing you see is Raguel's household. Raguel has a daughter called Sarah. And Sarah has attempted to get married 7 times. And every time she gets into the wedding chamber, before the any of those marriages could be consummated, they couldn't get together because a demon called Asmodeus interferes and kills off the husband. And Sarah is getting a reputation for being a woman who kills husbands. And even her maid says to her, "Oh, you're just a dreadful woman. What's going on here? You're a shame to everybody." And Sarah is so distressed, she goes to her room intending to hang herself. But when she gets there, she realises she can't do that to her father. She says, "I can't leave this life and leave behind me a story for my father when everyone will say, 'Oh, your daughter was the one who hung herself.'" So she chooses not to commit suicide, and then she prays to God and says, "I'm innocent here. What's going on? I need your benevolence, your support." Right. So that's Sarah. In the meantime, Tobias is saying to his father, "That's all very well. Medea is a very long way away, and I don't even know where it is. How could I get there?" So Tobit says to him, "Well, go out into the marketplace and find yourself a guide." This is where the magic begins, because Tobias goes out and he very quickly finds a man who is willing to be his guide. So Tobias sets off on the journey with the guide beside him, and partly along the journey they were walking by a river. And by the way, the nice bit about the story is Tobias has a nice little dog with him, which is his companion. So many of the paintings have the picture of Tobias with the little dog. So they come to the river, and the guide says, "Catch a fish. I want you to catch a fish. Then we can eat the fish, and that will be our meal." And a fish, nice big fish, comes really easily for Tobias. He's quite surprised. So they eat the fish, but the guide says to him, "Save some of that fish. I want you to save the innards, the bits and pieces that we don't eat. I want you to keep them wrapped up." Eventually, they arrive at Medea, at Raguel's house, and Tobias introduces himself and says, I'm Tobit's son, and, I've come to collect some money. Now, in the meantime, poor old Raphael has been very concerned about his daughter not having a husband. And he thinks, I might try another one. Try number 8, see if that works. And especially because Tobias is a relative. And, it's all in the tribe. So Tobias is very nervous because he's heard the story about the other 7. Oh. But his guide says to him, no, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. So Tobias and Sarah get married. They go to the wedding chamber to get into bed together. And Asmodeus turns up. The demon turns up. However, the guide also has given Tobias some instructions. He says, take the liver from the fish and throw it into the fire that you've got in the bedroom to keep it warm. Throw it in there, and that will send out a stench, an aroma that will frighten the demon away. And that's what happens. So Tobias and Sarah are able to get together, and Sarah, at long last, is married, happily married. So when they announce this to Raphael, he's very pleased about this, and they have a lovely celebration. And he says, oh, by the way, there's all this money. You can take this money back to your father, Tobit. So that'll be amazing, won't it? And at the meal that they have, the celebration meal, they invite the guide. And the guide sits with them and appears to be eating the meal. But at a certain point, the guide stands up and says, actually, what you see here is an illusion. I'm not really eating. I don't need human food. And then he reveals himself, or herself, whichever, reveals that this is Raphael. And he says, the biblical story, he says, I am Raphael, one of 7 spirits who stand before the throne. In other words, the 7 mighty archangels. And then, because everybody's astounded, and they realise that something very special has been going on because the demon's been conquered and the money is flowing. So Tobias goes back off to his father, and the archangel Raphael stays with him. And when they get there to meet Tobit again, the archangel says to him, use some of that fish gut, make it into an ointment, put it on your father's eyes. And then what happens, of course, is that Tobias loses his cataracts and he is able to see again. And so this is a really happy story. Somebody's got married, the money is flowing again, and somebody has been healed of a major disability. So it's a delightful story, and it tells us a great deal about the energy of Raphael, the healer of God. That's what Raphael's name means, the healer of God. Raph is Hebrew for healing. And when we look at that energy, which I think, anybody who knows astrology does feel like it's to do with Venus, as we talk about the planetary qualities of Venus, money, healing, and marriage, we can see that there's something here. The overall word could be reconciliation. Reconciliation and a new sense of balance. The frustration is eased, the anxiety is eased, the anger is eased. It's like oil on troubled waters. So that is the quality that we find with Raphael. So I invite you to listen to the Raphael audio before my next video. But also another thing you can do is to keep that image, that A4 image, keep that image of Raphael around you. Just put it anywhere that would catch your eye in passing, or have it in your bedroom or somewhere. Don't stick a drawing pin in it on the corkboard, perhaps. Make a bit of a fuss of Raphael. And another thing that you can do to spread out those images on the floor, again, in the map of the Tree of Life, you could stand at the bottom and ask yourself, do I feel grounded in this? Do I feel my emotional life and my practical life, Sandow was very practical, are nicely working together, you know? And then let me ask Gabriel, you know, to give me some wisdom, to communicate something, to give me access to the angelic realms so I can get any wisdom I need for my place in this earthly life. And then you could stand beside Raphael, walk up that side of your map, stand beside Raphael and say, I'm looking for reconciliation, and abundance is another word you could use, and healing. Just, you know, stand with her, see what comes to you. So at every stage on this journey, we're always asking ourselves questions about balance. We're always saying to ourselves, I feel this Archangel's quality is really significant in my life, in the way I've got to live my life. But I'm also aware that the other Archangels play their place, and I must never relegate them as not important or even as so challenging I don't want to know. You know, I've had students say, oh, you know, because a lot of my students are healers. So Raphael is really special for us. But Haniel, we feel really challenged by. We feel that's, you know, too assertive, perhaps too in your face. We're going to be talking about Haniel tomorrow and how to deal with that if that's your response. But we must always come back to the fact that the yin and the yang are asking us to receive those energies as equals. They may seem like contraries, but they're not. They are complementaries, right? And we need to encompass them in our lives in order to be whole and integrated in our activities on planet Earth. So one more thing I want to say about getting messages from the Archangels when you're listening to the videos. I had a particular question today from Alex, I think, about Sandalphon, and said he didn't get an answer to his question, what can I do to be supportive for planet Earth? And I would say, don't necessarily give up if you think you don't get an instant answer. Answers and what we need comes sometimes very, very gradually, and it's not entirely obvious immediately. I remember having one experience many years ago when I was in a bath and I was just moodling. My word moodling is, it's like doodling, but it's with your mind. And it comes much more easily to people who meditate. So I was just moodling in the bath. And a kind of inner voice said, what you need will come to you shortly. And I won't tell you what the topic was, but a few days later, I came across a book, and that was exactly what helped me move forward. So, you know, there's all kinds of occasions when, you know, something just can turn up. And actually, when you look back, and sometimes you don't associate it with the question that you've asked until later. And you suddenly think, yes, I asked about that. And here is something leading me forward. So Alex, and anybody else who experiences it like that, don't give up on it. Just assume that you haven't heard yet. Okay, I'll be back in a day or so's time, and we'll be talking about Haniel. Many blessings, and stay joyful.